Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and my guest today is Ernie Audino, who's a retired Brigadier General with the U.S. Army. Ernie, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Mike, it's my pleasure to be with you, and I'm going to be of service.
I've got a lot of questions for you, Ernie. You've got a very very interesting career path that brought you to our show today. Let me answer some of the easy questions first. How long did you serve in the Army?
Well, it was a total of 32 years, including 4 years at West Point, and I do it all over again, Mike. Doesn't mean that every day was a superb day. Of course, it is the Army, but every day was worthwhile, I'll tell you. Well,
listen, let me say first, thank you very much for your service. That is a lifetime of service, and we citizens greatly appreciate you.
Well, thanks. I mean, there are many, many, many more that deserve those accolades more than I do, but the bottom line is we've got a great country, and it just makes it all worthwhile.
Do you ever see that one commercial where they're talking about Google yourself so you can see what all is being said about you? Ernie, I've Googled your name in preparation for the show, and wow, there's a lot of great things being said about you. Along with that, a lot of pictures with you serving all over the world.
Well, so I hope I didn't post those photos.
No. Just a whole bunch of really, really good photos. And I saw pictures of you with former President Bush. And hey, listen, on that note, I didn't see any pictures of you with President Obama.
You're baiting me, I know.
I am a little bit. You got me.
And you probably won't see any photos of me with President Obama.
I couldn't resist. I apologize. But when I saw the picture of you and President Bush, I smiled. And I didn't launch a search because I knew I wouldn't find the opposing picture, as it were. Listen, along the path of your career, I see you were embedded with Kurdish folks. Is that with the Kurds? Is that true?
That's absolutely true. I spent a year embedded with the Kurdish Peshmerga, and in particular the PUK, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan Peshmerga. I was embedded as commander of a military transition team, which is a team of combat advisors. I was the chief combat advisor to a full brigade of Peshmerga, 3,300 Kurdish fighters. And for your listeners that don't or have not heard the term Peshmerga, that is Kurdish, and it translates literally to those who confront death.
Wow. That's a pretty significant single-word statement. Do I understand the Kurdish language is Old Iranian? Is that a fair statement?
Well, it's in the Indo-European language. The Kurds will gladly point that out to you, and it has some Iranic characteristics to it. Maybe they're both Indo-European languages. I don't know, but certainly Kurdish is, and the Kurds will tell you that. They are it's a non-Semitic language. They'll say that, and they'll tell you that they are ethnically not Arabs, nor are they Persians.
When I had Shirko Abbas, the president of the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria, which is, by the way, some questions I've got for you today, because I see there's different, I don't know if it's factions or just Kurdish people separated by borders that have been placed after the fact. But what I'm looking at, the Kurds in Syria, in all of those countries in that general sphere have Kurds, and I'm wondering if they operate together, or if they're just separate from each other. How does their communication and their structure work? Are they separate?
Well, they're separated because of the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. After the Treaty of Lausanne and the Treaty of Sèvres, which guaranteed to the Kurds a nation, a country, as it did to the other countries in the Middle East, other peoples in the Middle East. But that was effectively not ratified through the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. So the Kurdish population, that demographic, is split up across the following countries. Turkey has the most. And now people will debate me on the population figures, and they're absolutely please do, because there aren't any precisely accurate numbers that I know, but these are general. So there are about 20 or so million in Turkey. There are probably 7.5, 8.5, maybe 10 million in Iraq. There are probably 4.5, 5 million, maybe 6 million in Iran, and perhaps another 3.5, 4 million in Syria. So those are the major chunks of Kurds. And so have you asked? I mean, you asked kind of how they might work together. Well, one, they've been a people that have largely inhabited very complex terrain up in the mountains, and you can imagine centuries ago the effect of that complex terrain on the ability to move across the Kurdish population. So that had an effect on many things, especially the dialects. So there are some very unique dialects spoken across the Kurdish population. And I was embedded with the PUK Peshmerga along the Iranian border primarily. Over there, it's largely based on ancient Sorani, or they call it Sorani. And then over towards Erbil, or as the Kurds call it, Haler, and towards Syria, it's a Kermanji dialect. Those are the two big dialects, but there are others.
Tell me this, Ernie. Just what does it mean to be embedded? When I think of embedded, I think of the endless streams of news reports on cable TV talking about embedded journalists, and obviously you weren't a journalist. So, what was your function?
Well, we were one of probably 1,000 such teams across Iraq. Mine was the team that was embedded with the Pesh. We were American teams, small teams of 10 to 11 men, plus interpreters. And we lived in a safe house that was about an hour and 45 minutes from the nearest American forward operating base. So, as frequently said by others, jokingly, we were out there alone and unafraid. But the truth is, we were out there embedded with a brigade that had been rebadged as the Iraqi army, but was 100% Kurdish Peshmerga units. And we were there to help build in these new Iraqi army units the capability to conduct independent counterinsurgency operations, and we had to serve as the link to U.S. effects, such as close air support, artillery, intelligence primarily, et cetera, et cetera.
I have a gunsmith that works at a shop I own, Ernie, and he served. He's a Marine. He served in Iraq, and he talks. I've told him about my conversation last week and this coming interview with you this week, and his vantage is kind of fascinating for me. And maybe you can tell me how far off the mark he is. But he talked about in his experience there, he thought that the people that they were fighting were absolutely barbaric. But then he described the Kurds as having an approach to family like America used to. And he also talked about their ferociousness. He described a guy that he thought was about 70 years old that had a rifle in one hand and a cane in the other. And he would take position, he would empty his firearm, move to the next position with his cane, kneel down, reload, and fire until he was, and then take a new position. He said these people just don't quit trying to defend their homeland. Is that kind of how you saw them?
Absolutely. I could tell you any number of stories about my comrades over there, my brothers in arms, but maybe I give you two quick ones. One, my immediate counterpart was a man who's probably been fighting as a Peshmerga since he was old enough to hold a rifle. He was the commander of the 3,300-man brigade, but when I met him, he had already been wounded 8 times in battle, fighting Saddam's troops or other Islamist groups way before we in the United States even thought to know or learn about such groups. Yes, there were predecessor groups that operated there, and the Kurds fought against them as early as 1960. Probably earlier. These types of groups, these Islamist groups, started to develop. In either case, I was with him in Tikrit when he got hit his 9th time. Now, if he was in the United States, if he's in the U.S. Army, that would be his 9th Purple Heart, right? So he was hit his 9th time. He's hit through the leg, and we've got about, 150 Peshmerga with us. The man is still directing the fight. And he used to say to me frequently, or occasionally, brother, for you to get hurt, I'll have to die first. And, those are the words of a real brother.
Right.
Probably sometime in the evening, maybe the next day, we had taken a casualty. We'd lost a man, a good man by the name of Sirwan, a young Peshmerga. We had, I think, 3 or 5 wounded. But things were winding down, and we were trying to relax and get some food. And it was a slightly lighter moment, and I turned to him and I said, hey, in the middle of all that shooting, I looked over at you, and you weren't dead yet, so I figured that was A-okay.
I love it.
But, I once was in near Halabja, the site of the world's greatest, largest chem strike against the civilian population, and this was March 16th of 1988, and Saddam wiped out 5,000 people that day with a mix of all kinds of chemical agents, from certainly blister agents and nerve agents, possibly choking agents. Maybe the world will never know what that precise combination was, and this was about 25 minutes from my safe house, so I got there frequently. In either case, at one time I was over there with the Joff tribe, a very famous tribe of Kurds, and I'm walking, and I see this older lady, and because of the way she was wearing her jamadani on her head, her mishki, I realized she was a respected older lady. Her gown, the dress she was wearing, was made of tiny Kurdish flags. Certainly she would have been maybe detained, if not worse, for wearing that years ago. But she was wearing it proudly this particular day. But what caught me first was she was holding an AK-47. And I stopped and I said, Hure, Auntie, which is a term of endearment in Kurdish. I said, Auntie, what's with the Kalashnikov? And she says to me, I was a Peshmerga for 13 years. And I came back to my village one day and my family had been killed. This Kalashnikov is my best friend, and I will be buried with it.
Hard to argue with that. Awfully hard to argue with that, Ernie.
There is a will to defend humanity that saturates the Kurdish population. The will to do it, and my God, these are our best allies in Iraq, and they have always been.
It's funny that part of why I was really excited about having you on is that I wanted to get exactly to that point that you just outlaid. In fact, I asked Dr. Abbas this last week, and I still don't know that I understand it. But we always hear across the medium spectrum, it doesn't matter whether it's Fox or CNN, etc. Everyone I hear probably weekly, maybe more often, where are the moderate Muslim voices standing up against the extremists, the jihadists, the extreme, etc. And I'm listening to everything that I can find on the Kurds, and of course I have no direct experience, so I've got to go with what I read, and you were there. But from what I read, the Kurds are the moderate Muslims that are saying, help us fight back against this, and for some reason our government has turned a deaf ear to them. Am I missing it, Ernie?
No, you're not missing it. You're not missing it at all. And I can't explain why this particular administration may not have recognized that, but I certainly recognize that. I mean, where do I begin? The Kurds, the Kurds were the object of real genocide, decades of repression. They were hit with chemical weapons 48 times, 48 villages saturated with chemical weapons. 46 of those were within my brigade area in Iraq. And literally, the spent shells from that ordnance litter the ground in places. And 200,000 Kurds were slaughtered or otherwise went missing. 7 million landmines were sown into the land around the Kurds. These were forbidden zones where Saddam and his cousin Chemical Ali had barred any living entity to exist. These were Kurdish areas, and they built numerous. Their concentration camps by any other name. Saddam called them relocation camps. I probably had a half a dozen within a 20-minute drive of my safe house. But the point of the matter is, when the Kurds are being exterminated, the Kurds, who are overwhelmingly Muslim, know that no other Muslim country came to their aid. They will say this to you. They will tell you this. They identify first by their ethnicity, and everything else is secondary. They have Catholic Kurds. They have Jewish Kurds. They have pre-Christian religion still being practiced in some of the pockets up in the mountains. They've always been very accommodating because they have always identified with their ethnicity first, and they're just wonderful people.
When I was with what reading I was able to do, in fact, I joked Dr. Abbas a little bit. Everything that I could find sounded a little bit Thomas Jeffersonian. I mean, they're calling for a Republican form of government, a small R, Republican form of government, and for freedom of religion and for local sovereignty for local government, so people could steer their own political and social ships. When I try to put my U.S. government hat on, I can't fathom why the United States wouldn't say 40 million people, to your point, depending on who's telling the math here, plus or minus 40 million people that all want to have essentially a government like we have. I just can't imagine turning them away from them. Listen, Ernie, we're gonna cut to a break, but we'll be right back and pick up on that topic.
Yes, sir.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com. Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m., there'll be a oldies dance and spaghetti dinner at the White Lake Eagles. For a $5 donation, all money to benefit Terry Osbo and her kidney transplant surgery. We'll also have items for raffle, like jewelry, gift certificates, tanning and hair care items, Harley-Davidson shirts, Bud Light Grill, a cooler in the shape of a canoe, Michigan Adventure tickets, wine tasting at Lemon Creek, hotel stays, and tons of oldies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m. at the White Lake Eagles in Whitehall.
Are you one of the many Americans who undergo CPAP or BiPAP therapy? Replacing your supplies every 3 to 6 months is critical, as bacteria will build up and worn-out straps cause leaks. Call Allied Medical Supply Network and speak to an expert agent who will set up a schedule for your supplies to be delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today and rest easy.
Call 800-284-2512. That's 800-284-2512.
This is a national health alert from Worldwide Medical. Are you on Medicare? And do you suffer from back or knee pain? Have you tried injections, pain pills, or even had or considered surgery? If these examples apply to you or a loved one in pain, stop. There is a better way. You could qualify to receive a pain-relieving back or knee brace at little or no cost to you. You'll receive free information, free delivery, and all the insurance paperwork is handled for free. Best of all, there is little to no cost to you for the braces. Call 1-800-282-6789 to get all the details. It takes just a couple of minutes. These amazing braces have helped thousands of people in severe pain, and you may qualify to have yours delivered directly to your door at little or no cost to you. Call 1-800-282-6789 right now. This may be the most important call you make all year. That's 800-282-6789. Call now.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. Today my guest is General Audino, who served, 32 years? Is that correct, Ernie?
Yeah, that's right. Clay Fort, West Point, that's right.
32 years. That's a lifetime. Hey, when we went to break, we were talking about, I genuinely can't fathom what would cause our current administration, and so I got to ask, just to make sure we're on the right path, was the Bush administration more welcoming to the Kurds?
Well, let me start by saying this. You had mentioned some Jeffersonian principles earlier, right before the break, and you were kind of reminding me of something I used to say quite a bit when I would call home from when I was embedded with the Kurds. The Kurds, when they speak of democracy, they speak of liberty, they speak of freedom, they speak of free marketeering. And, I used to tell people, they don't just sound like Americans when they speak. They sound like Republicans, for crying out loud.
I love it, yep.
Well, but to get to your precise question just now, I think, first, even the Bush administration, and I have the highest regard for them, even they were colored in a way by, really, I think it was a lack of information. It's just kind of a nationwide here in the United States lack of information on the Kurdish situation. It's hard to find Kurdish history or even discussion in the English language. The bulk of folks who are Middle Eastern experts in our State Department have grown up on a diet of Arabist studies. I call them Arabists.
Right.
So, that's neither wrong nor right, but you need a balance, and you need some other folks in there that can understand the situation, because that's the first step in solving a problem. But if you always have this narrow focus, but perhaps a very deep knowledge base, but a narrow range, well, it's not surprising that the courses of action that you offer might be skewed in one particular direction.
It's fascinating that the world talks about 3 million Palestinians, but skip 40 million Kurds without their own property. Dr. Abbas talked about a family that had been on one parcel of land for 400 years and were now considered illegal immigrants. You go,
yes.
And it's amazing to me that we're absent on it. But to your point of a vacuum of knowledge or a lack of knowledge, listen, I consider myself somewhat of a news hound, and I do this for a living. My vantage of Kurds were only through the reference made during the Iraqi War in terms of the Kurds in northern Iraq, and that was it. So when I was preparing for my interview with Dr. Abbas last week and I went looking for a Kurdistan map, you should have seen my face when I first stumbled on the map. I was astounded as to how large it was. And then I'm studying on it. I'm thinking, I know that outline from somewhere. And so 10 seconds later on Google, I come up with the final Ottoman Empire map from 1914. And
right?
it's the same shadow. It's still there. It's the same people and it's where the border was. I found that utterly fascinating.
Well, I like to say, never underestimate the power of the timid. And the reality, in my opinion, is because we have such a dominant, one-faceted position on the Middle East, we have people who are frankly afraid to step out beyond that. The only real course of action that is fundamentally different from the others that's being offered to this day would be to promote a strong, independent Kurdistan. That particular concept, that notion that the KRG, the Kurdistan Regional Government, right now is proving its effectiveness against ISIS on a relatively regional scale. It's not too hard. It's really not unreasonable to stretch it to say it's likely to have a similar effect on a larger scale if it was stronger and more independent. But I think that scares people. There were these people. There were many people who used to say, "Oh, but Turkey, you got to worry about Turkey." Yeah. You know what? The first country to step forward when this recent ISIS onslaught began, the first one to step forward and support Kurdish self-determination inside Iraq was Turkey. Hell has frozen over, my friends.
Absolutely.
There are reasons for that, by the way.
Do you think the State Department and the Obama administration, frankly, fear Syria and Iran in terms of the Kurdish populations that overlap their borders? So it's easier for them just to pretend that doesn't exist. And then let me dovetail my own question, if you don't mind me throwing two at you. But it seems to me a little bit like the 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people, whatever the real numbers are for ISIS, let's say it's 40,000, that do evil things somehow overshadow 40 million people that are trying to find a way to live peaceably. Does that make sense, those questions?
Well, the first one, I guess, was on Iran. Well, this is what I'll say about Iran. Nobody is reporting this, and to me, it's inexplicable. The Iranians right now have near dominant influence over the southern 60% of Iraq, and they have since Maliki was instated as prime minister. Well, actually, probably prior to that, because 60% of the population of Iraq is Shia.
Right.
So they identify with the Shia of Iran. With Abadi there now as the prime minister, it's the same thing. That condition has not changed at all. So we've got the Iranians who have this near universal influence over the southern 60%. Why would it make sense that we would cede the north of Iraq to them too? Well, let me tell you something. While we dither, others do not. In particular, Iran. While we are, for example, we have, for the most part, limited our airstrikes to areas around Mosul and I think some of the areas, of course, out towards perhaps, the dam and other areas towards the west. But we've heard that there's a 1,000-kilometer border now between Kurdistan and the ISIS-controlled area, the dominated area of Sunni populations between Kurdistan and the rest of Iraq. That's 600 miles. That's a geopolitical reality right now that the Kurds have to deal with. Well, there's only another 100 kilometers to go to get to the Iranian border. And there's a town called Jalala, very strategic town that sits right there. Hanakin is right north of that. It's an oil town. And if the administration is serious about this notion of a unified Iraq, well, the first order of business is to make sure it's contiguous, physically contiguous. Wouldn't you think?
He's not worried about our contiguous border. Why would he be worried about theirs?
Well, here's my point. There's only 100 kilometers. That's 60 miles left to a contiguous Iraq, and ISIS has been hammering that area. They want to push through to the Iranian border in the worst way. That town of Jalala, the Pesh that are in there right now, and I have a good friend who's commanding a battalion of Pesh in Tuz Khramatu, which is not far away. These guys have been asking for U.S. support, asking for U.S. airstrikes. This is what they're telling me, and they haven't been getting it. For the life of me, I can't understand why we are not doing that. But while we don't do it, guess who's doing it? Iran. So there are Iranian airplanes. I'm hearing reports of 5,000 Iranian soldiers on the ground in the Jalala area of the Diyala province. And I've also seen a report of several hundred Iranian special forces landing inside Kirkuk. All while we do nothing about that. The reason why this is happening is because you kind of have to do what you got to do. If you're the Kurds and you need some additional combat power, you need some other elements of combat power, like air support or long-range artillery or armored fighting vehicles, you can't be too choosy. And that's what's happening right now. We've got Iranians filling the vacuum.
So you're saying if they need it to stay alive, they're going to go to where they can get it.
Yeah.
Yep, kind of. Tell me this, is how does Russia have a dog in this hunt? I ask that because there's so many resources. I can't imagine Putin just standing around ignoring it.
Yeah, I had seen reports that Putin had decided to send some MiGs to Baghdad. Baghdad. Well, the Kurds are greatly fearful of any such aircraft in the hands of the Maliki regime, and who knows about the Abadi regime in Baghdad. But I've seen that report. But other than that, I don't know that I've seen much else to suggest any Russian presence there. But there's definitely Russian presence in Syria.
Right, and Russian presence in Iran, and so by extension, I mean that's. By extension, it's the same thing. I just think we're in a massive geopolitical shift, and all of these things probably have got maybe roughly fit pieces that are sliding at the same time. Is it a vacuum filled for a lack of leadership? That might be it.
Yeah.
Tell me where did ISIS come from?
Well, my goodness.
That's a nice, easy question, or?
Yeah. Well, there's this. I don't know. I think Sam Huntington. If we want to go back to 1992, 3, where I think he had published his book, A Clash of Civilizations, way back then, right about that time. And he sat back and he asked himself the question: geez, what does the demise of the Soviet Union mean? What's it going to mean to the world as we know it? The demise of one of the two superpowers. That sort of, kind of walk softly around each other, little cautious about overreaching and perhaps kicking off World War III. Well, he asked the question, and after he studied this and put some thought into it, he realized, well, the next likely groups that people will identify with. Previously, they identified with the Eastern Bloc or the Western Bloc, Warsaw Pact or the Western powers. He saw a civilizational identity, and you've got the West, and the biggest ones, of course, were the West and Islam, and he thought that there was room for frictions along, he called them the fault lines, you see, and perhaps where these fault lines are, that's possibly where some of these jihadist groups got inspired. We know for sure that in Iraq, when I was there, the highest per capita number of foreign fighters captured in Iraq in 2006, which was a very violent full year of that war. The highest per capita numbers came from Libya. And guess where in Libya? Benghazi, okay? Right where the current uprising began. And I'm sorry to say, we misinterpreted what that was. We started, did we not? We started supporting those Benghazins in the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi. That was the enemy.
Right.
That was the enemy. Well, then we see them identifying as jihadis again inside Egypt. All right, and here we had Hosni Mubarak, the Mubarak regime, who's been a longtime ally, and when he needed us, we were persuaded to again side with the uprising, which in this case again was full of jihadists. Well,
do you think that's by Ernie? I'm sorry to cut you off, but do you think that's by accident? And listen, some of the, I'm sure you've heard it out in blogospheres and across the internet, and maybe on occasion with other radio, TV shows. But there seems to be a lot of folks that look to Obama and say he's not one of us, he's one of them. And I hate to be that blunt, and I don't want to be shrill, but I can't for the life of me understand how it is that he continues to side with the enemy. Am I seeing that wrong? Tell me what you see.
I don't know. I think I don't know how to explain that, but at a minimum, it's certainly a misunderstanding of the situation. The first order of business is to well, as we say, see first, understand first, and act first. We have to well understand the problem, and I'm not convinced that we do. We didn't appreciate the real enemy in Libya. We didn't appreciate the real enemy in Egypt. And I think we were sort of fooled again in Libya in the early stages there.
I got to tell you, the gunsmith that I referred to that served over there as a Marine, he literally has to leave the room when the news is on talking about this topic. He came back very disabled, lost a lot of brothers. He said they're surrendering our victory and we paid for it with our blood. He literally has to leave the room. He cannot stand seeing Obama on TV because he thinks he's doing it overtly and on purpose.
Well, yeah, I know. He's certainly getting the best of military advice. Certainly, far better than I could give him. But there are others that give him advice as well. And in the end, my opinion is it's just a misunderstanding, a deep misunderstanding of the reality of the situation on the ground.
On the note of misunderstandings, over the last couple of years, he's dismissed a whole bunch of military officers, and so goes the rationale that he dismissed those he disagreed with on an ideological or political basis. I'm going to guess that you probably knew some of those folks that were dismissed from captain all the way up to general. Am I?
Well, yeah, I knew some of them, sure.
Was that ideological, do you think, or? I mean, he seemed to find things wrong with every one of them, but they were by far and large men that, from everything I could see, served with distinction.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no way of knowing, to be honest with you. So, I wouldn't even want to speculate. Okay,
that's fair enough. Do you know what? How did you end up? How did you end up becoming embedded? Was that just an assignment that worked out well, or how does that happen?
Well, I like to say it was against all Army logic because I had studied Kurdish history under Ambassador Galbraith, who has a long history himself with the Kurds. This was at the National War College, and I had studied Islam in the Middle East. In fact, that was my concentration, with a real focus on Kurdish issues. And I continued. I was inspired to continue my studies, and lo and behold, the Army embeds me with the Kurds, and I thought, wow, I mean, they could have embedded me in Korea, I suppose. It starts with the same letter, but
that's funny.
I'm just very, very happy that it worked out the way it did for me.
It looks like you came away with that with some lifetime friendships.
Well, I did, but I also lost some good friends there, some good Kurdish friends, and I can't forget that. When we were there, we lost 22 brave Peshmerga. We had 60 wounded in that year. And I got to tell you something, Mike. I attended just about all of those, not quite all of them, but the vast majority of those funerals. And just to show you what decent people the Kurds are, how they're wonderful, moderate people. Here I am, a Christian, and after our first loss, we had taken ourselves back and we're getting ourselves cleaned up. And my counterpart says, we're going to the funeral, it's tomorrow, because they try to do that within 24 hours. And at the time it sounded great. I said, okay, I expected that. But then as I thought about it, I said, geez, I'm going to guess I'm going to be inside a mosque, which is, frankly, was off limits to Americans anywhere else in Iraq. I'm sure that I was probably one of the very few Americans who was welcomed inside the mosque. And in this case, when I attended the funeral, I had first family and friends coming up to me as an American to tell me how honored they were that an American came to the funeral of their son. They wanted me to know, my son has an American flag on the wall in our house. He has or other times I heard, my son has a photo of George Bush in our house. And I was escorted in, and in every case, I was seated right next to the mullah.
General Audino, I got to stop you for a second because the music's on. It's telling me we got to take a break.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to pick right up on that because I think that's a crucial point. Folks,
right.
We'll be right back.
Perfect.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.
Attention hip replacement patients. Several metal-on-metal hip implants have been recalled, and a jury recently awarded $8.3 million to one hip replacement victim.
Metal-on-metal hip implants can cause excruciating pain and may require expensive surgery to replace. If you had a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or it needs to be removed, call the Goldwater Law Firm right now.
I'm attorney Bob Goldwater. Metal-on-metal hip replacements can be dangerous. If you have a metal-on-metal hip implant, even if it hasn't failed yet, call us right now. You may be entitled to substantial compensation.
The manufacturer of your defective hip implant should have to pay for your medical expenses and your pain and suffering.
Your time to act is quickly running out, so call us right now.
If you have a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or is causing you problems,
call 1-800-540-9516. That's 1-800-540-9516.
Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m., there'll be a oldies dance and spaghetti dinner at the White Lake Eagles. For a $5 donation, all money to benefit Terry Osbo and her kidney transplant surgery. We'll also have items for raffle, like jewelry, gift certificates, tanning and hair care items, Harley-Davidson shirts, Bud Light Grill, a cooler in the shape of a canoe, Michigan Adventure tickets, wine tasting at Lemon Creek, hotel stays, and tons of oldies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m. at the White Lake Eagles in Whitehall.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show with my guest, General Audino. General, welcome back.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.
Hey, listen, when we went to break, you were describing going to a funeral at a mosque. I got to tell you, that really surprised me. Probably, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, well, I at the first one, as my counterpart was coming by to pick me up to take me to the mosque or the funeral, I actually said, I said, is this really a good idea? And he was shocked. He was actually angry. He says, no, you are a Peshmerga. You are one of us. You are going to the funeral. And I got to tell you, for every one of the remaining funerals that I was able to attend, and which was the vast majority of the 22 we lost, it was the same instance. Welcomed like a brother. It made no difference whatsoever that I was Christian. None.
Very, very, very nice. I wish there was more of that around the world, but that's the exact thing that causes me to say, what are we thinking as a government with our foreign policy? Tell me on and I can't say the word. Say the word again. You were a what? Person. What did? Yeah, I can't say the word. Tell me something. I was looking. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning of our interview today that I was looking through pictures, and I saw a number of pictures with you in U.S. uniform, but with a what do you call it? With the hat, not a U.S. hat on, but one of their headdresses.
Yeah, that's called the Jamadani. Yeah.
I've never seen a person in a U.S. uniform wearing whatever word you just said.
Yeah, I'm sure my bosses were surprised at that too. But
I bet.
Sometimes, you got to do what you got to do, and I was actually ready. If they didn't like it, well, the mission required it, and I was prepared to defend that.
My Marine gunsmith had a very different answer. He said at his rank, he could go in his underwear and unshaven if he wanted. So that was his answer.
I doubt that. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Hey, listen, a little bit of time left. What I really wanted to get from you before we run out today is if you were at the helm and could help guide policy, what would you have us do in that region?
Yeah. First and foremost, I would be absolutely clear, and I would want my administration to be absolutely clear about the war we are facing. This enemy is facing total war. All right? They're conducting total war. We are not. All right? We want it to be something it's not. Our enemy is fighting total war wherein any target is acceptable, any objective is acceptable, any weapon is acceptable, any tactic is acceptable. They are not waging a war for a political purpose. And I will have legions of professional warriors, soldiers, officers who will debate me on this point, but I assert this is not about politics. All right? There is no political issue in dispute that one side can concede to the other and the war is over. It's not. Just look at what Al-Qaeda and the other groups have to say. So you can't negotiate with these people. We have to understand. We have to be very clear with ourselves what is the character of this particular war. And that is the first step. We must understand it.
It feels like our administration still wants to approach it like it's a criminal offense. And I just, to me, it is war, and we can pretend there isn't any war, but our enemy's not going to pretend.
Yeah, well, my counterpart, I got to tell you, one of my counterparts, he said to me one day when we were out there on the ground, Kurdish counterpart, he says, brother, we read the headlines too, and we know your country is talking about timelines now and talking about pulling U.S. soldiers back. And he says to me, he goes, I don't want you to worry about us. It just means we'll keep fighting. We've always fought. He said, fought to defend what we have. And he says, and look what we have here. We have the most peaceful, now the most prosperous piece of Iraq, and we didn't get that with student exchange programs. He he said, but I would like to ask those Americans 2 questions. He said, first, do you think Al-Qaeda has a timeline? And second, he said, do they think if the Americans stop fighting Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda will stop fighting them? And, here's a man who didn't have much education. He probably got through, 8th grade, but the realities of genocide and having to defend the humanity of the Kurdish areas kind of got in the way of that. But I never forgot those words. And we have to continue to recognize the threat. It's still here. It's not going away. And we can either submit or destroy it, and I choose to do whatever I can to destroy it.
Dr. Abbas told us last week that that we should be seeing the Kurds as our boots on the ground, and that we should be considering arming them in the same fashion that we did with the Lend-Lease program with Great Britain during World War II. And that caused me to think after the interview, is it a fair or is it an accurate, forget fair, is it accurate to compare ISIS and that ideology or that radicalism with Nazi Germany's attempt to take over the world?
Well, I do think there's an attempt to, or a will, certainly an intent to take over the world. Just read the captured documents. Just read some of the public statements. Right. There's no doubt. Why do we want to believe they actually mean something they're not saying? No, actually, I listen to what they say. I hear what they say. I take it at face value. And yet here we have the Kurds, wonderful, decent people who have the will to resist. But will and capability are 2 different things. We did not well equip them for offensive operations, and we did that by design for some fear that this would destabilize the Middle East. Well, Iraq is leaving Kurdistan right now, right? There is an instability that the Kurds are having to manage. So what can we do right now? Well, first, we've got to be able to, and I'm sure we are, provide them superb intelligence. We've got to be able to give them as much as is needed for the mission. We've got to be able to do that. We've got to be able to give them real firepower, real armored fighting vehicles. They need the mobility. They've got to be able to prosecute this fight in depth against this enemy. This war will not be won by defensive operations alone. We will not break the enemy's will to fight unless we can terrorize them with the effects of our awesome power in a way they've never seen. A few airstrikes just don't do it, you see.
You're thinking something on the paramount of like shock and awe, just an absolute blitzkrieg, to use an old term.
Well, I might not use the term shock and awe, but well-coordinated U.S. effects in support of well-supplied, well-equipped Peshmerga on the ground. They are willing to do it. They need enhanced capabilities. ISIS overmatches them right now in weapons. And oh, by the way, we should be clear. We should support them with. We should, if they should choose to use liberal rules of engagement, I would say we should support that and not look back later and say the Kurds were too rough. I mean, you can have liberal rules of engagement, and they still can be entirely permissible, and that's what I'm saying. And then here's another piece that I think we can do as a nation. We should unequivocally support Kurdish oil exports. Why are we afraid to do that? We are saying one thing kind of on a gentle level, but we don't really mean it. We've got to support it, and here's why. The Kurds are fighting a very expensive fight on behalf of not just themselves, but decency and humanity, right? And it's expensive, and they need to be financially healthy in order to be able to prosecute that. Baghdad has withheld the constitutional share of Iraqi revenues for some time now. The Kurds need to generate some money off of the oil that they're finally, for the first time in their history, being able to benefit from.
It feels like from the outside looking in that not only are we not following through with assistance, but we're actually being counterproductive. And that's, I truly can't, I don't understand why we would forget not helping, but we appear to be blocking their success. I don't think the American people understand that our news is filled with the 2 beheadings. And between now and when I interviewed Dr. Abbas last week, I can't tell you how many clips I have seen of Kurdish men being murdered in the same fashion by the same people. I mean, lots, not 2, lots and lots, uncountable numbers. It feels like the American people are totally removed.
Well, yeah, perhaps. Again, I'm just sorry that there's such a lack of information in the English language on the Kurdish situation, because I think that would have put us in a better position several years earlier. But I do sense, I'll tell you, Mike, I do sense, and many do, a slight shift in public understanding of the Kurds now, and frankly, support. At least some passionate support. I'm starting to see it. That's part of the first step.
General Audino, we're almost out of time, but tell me before the music starts, where would a person go if they wanted to get on the internet and research this? Is there a place or a person, you or somewhere, that they could reach out to get more information on this topic? Well,
that's a very good. I could point them to a single place. I'm sorry. I wish I had thought about that earlier. But
okay.
People can always ask me or call me, and I can perhaps point them in the right direction.
Tell you what, I will put with your permission, I'll put your email address onto my website. But General, we've got to go. General Audino, thank you very, very much for your service and for being on my show today.
My privilege. Thank you very much, Mike.
Brought to you by Renegade River.
Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m., there'll be a oldies dance and spaghetti dinner at the White Lake Eagles. For a $5 donation, all money to benefit Terry Osbo and her kidney transplant surgery. We'll also have items for raffle, like jewelry, gift certificates, tanning and hair care items, Harley-Davidson shirts, Bud Light Grill, a cooler in the shape of a canoe, Michigan Adventure tickets, wine tasting at Lemon Creek, hotel stays, and tons of oldies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sunday, September 14th at 3 p.m. at the White Lake Eagles in Whitehall. I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.